Hello, and welcome to another Lumberjanite guide for free-to-play OSRS. In this guide, we're going to be going through everything to do with free-to-play magic, so you can consider this guide the proverbial Alohomora for your magic potential, now updated for elemental weaknesses. Unlike some of my previous skill guides, magic actually has a couple of useful quests. First up is the Witch's Potion quest. This nets you a very easy 325 XP, see the link on the screen, for a guide. Next up, and this is also particularly key for Iron Men, is the Imp Catcher quest, which nets you 875 XP, as well as the Amulet of Accuracy, which is very useful if you can't use the Grand Exchange. Finally, you then have the optional 300 XP offered by the X Marks the Spot quest. Personally, I probably wouldn't use this for magic, but it's your call. Generally speaking, this is only applicable to Iron Men, as if you have access to the GE, you can buy everything you need there, so you do not need any starter stats. However, if you're an Iron Man, you're going to need level 24 crafting in order to craft yourself an Amulet of Magic, which you'll then also need a magic level of 7 to enchant once crafted. This shouldn't be an issue, as from the previous section, we should have already attained a magic level of 10. Let's move on to Starter Kit. You can see the best in slot items on the screen now. Starting top to bottom, we have a Wizard's Hat, black or blue, an Amulet of Magic, or an Amulet of Accuracy to start with if you're an Iron Man, a cape, a Wizard Robe top, black or blue, a Staff of Earth. I'm going to assume that you've bought all the staffs at this point. You definitely need to be using a staff, because if you don't, then you can't auto-cast spells. Manually casting is a big no-no for long-term magic training. Barefoot Staff is technically the best staff in free-to-play, however this requires a 1 in 118 drop from a boss that requires Mossy Keys to access, so it will take quite a long time to acquire. Barefoot's Essence is currently valued at around 10 million coins, so if you have the money and you want to splash out, then feel free. But remember that you'll need 30 attack and 30 magic in order to wield it, and it doesn't offer the rune benefits for training that normal staffs do. You can also see I'm wielding the Anti-Dragon Shield. You can only wield this if you started the Dragon Slayer 1 quest, which means you'll need 32 quest points. If you can't do that yet, then use the training shield that you get from the combat shooter in Lumbridge. For the leg slot, we need a Zami Monk bottom, and we need leather vams and leather boots. Again, if you're an Iron Man, in order to get the leather vams, you're going to have to craft these yourself, which requires a crafting level of 11, but this is well inside the crafting range we need to make the Amulet of Magic anyway. In the meantime, use leather gloves, and we can upgrade to leather vams when we get enough crafting. Everyone else can pretty much buy all these items from the GE. If you're an Iron Man and you want to get the best in slot leg item, the Zamorak Monk Bottoms, you're going to have to head to Asgarnia Chaos Temple. You can see that on the map there. You're going to have to be able to kill level 17 or 22 monks of Zamorak. These obviously are not particularly difficult, though if you are fresh off Tutorial Island or very low level, you may struggle. However, if you've completed the quests I mentioned earlier, the monks can be safe spotted from the doorway. There's a 1 in 20 chance of the Zami Monk bottoms dropping, so head up here before you get started. The last thing you're going to need in order to train magic is runes. On that note, I recommend a full suite of staffs, or staves, and initially we're going to get our free runes from the magic tutor in Lumbridge. She will give us 30 mind runes and 30 air runes in order to get the ball rolling. In the long run, you're going to need to buy runes. Don't worry though, because for each section, I'm going to give you an approximation of how many runes you're going to need. Magic can be expensive to train depending on the methods used, especially if you're going all the way to 99. You could make your own runes with rune crafting, but in free to play it's mega tedious, so I would advise against it. I recommend simply buying your runes. Iron Men, you're going to get ripped off by having to buy your runes from the various magic shops throughout Gelinor. Non-Irons, you can obviously buy from the GE. You can also minimise the rune spend by making sure you use the right staffs. And don't worry, again, I'm going to give you advice on that as well. Just before we start getting into the details of the actual enemies and the training, it's probably worthwhile looking at some actual combat mechanics. Here I've borrowed this handy table from OSRS Wiki, which is a great resource I use in nearly all of my videos. This basically shows that your max hit and XP is all based around the spell that you are using. Magic accuracy is more complicated. It's based on your magic level and your magic bonus versus the monster's magic level and their magic defense. And now also, if they have any elemental weakness to the spell. This is a relatively new update, but what it means is that certain enemies will now have a weakness percentage in their stats. Thankfully, this is a simple addition, where we basically get an additional 1% accuracy and 1% damage for each percentage point of weakness. This is actually a big game changer, and almost completely changes the monster choices for the guide. The main thing to remember is that every spell has the same level of accuracy. It's purely based off your magic level and magic bonus, not the spell you are using. The exception being if you use spells which a monster is weak against. I'm not going to show you the precise calculations because OSRS Wiki has created a DPS calculator, so rather than me working this stuff out manually, I'm going to use the tool and see how it works. Like before, I'll give the percentage accuracy plus the newly calculated DPS. Combining this with my chosen base spell XP and average damage should allow me to approximate how many runes you are going to need. Lastly, magic experience is calculated as the spell's base experience plus 2 magic XP per point of damage, offensive spells only. And when you attack in the regular fashion, that's the non-shield icon, aka offensive casting, you also get 1.33 hit points XP. You can use defensive casting, which splits your experience between defense, magic and HP, though I do not recommend it as there's much faster ways to train your defense. Splashing is a great method, particularly for the AFK trainer. The first thing to understand is that it's generally only effective with the strike-based spells. Wind Strike is by far and above the most cost effective, but also the slowest, while Fire Strike is the most expensive, but fastest. I've created a little guide table to help illustrate this. It should also explain why the strike spells are the most used options, as after these spells the cost increases exponentially. Also, once you're at level 55 plus, High Alching is far more efficient, getting around 78 XP per hour versus the 7.2k XP per hour from Wind Strike, as well as potentially generating a profit. Unfortunately, the lack of easy access nature runes means this method is not as useful for Iron Men, who I recommend look at my alternative, level 50 plus methods. The second thing to note is that you will need a full set of plate melee armour, including a shield, the fighting or fancy boots, and the green D-hide Vams in order to get the highest possible negative in magic attack. This means you'll need 40 range. You can splash without the Vam braces, though it will make a difference and will result in you landing more hits. Thus you will kill your target a touch faster. The last thing you'll need is a staff, probably wind or earth, so you can auto cast, and the runes for either wind or earth strike, as these seem to be the best options in my opinion. Once you have the required splashing gear, you've picked your spell, you just need to head to a safe spottable enemy, preferably one with a high magic defense, and, well, attack them. The captured priest of Zamorak in Varrock Palace is probably a good choice, since he can't attack back but has some magic defense. With the armor equipped, the vast majority of your spells will miss, but the attack will still register, locking you into an AFK cycle of casting and missing. Unfortunately, Jagex patched splashing such that after around 20 minutes your character will stop casting, but as long as you're there to click and continue the attack, you can do this AFK while you're doing other things. And that's really that. You can of course do this all the way up to level 99, which in the case of Wind Strike will take over 2 million casts, cost nearly 5 mil coins, and take nearly 2,000 hours. Very AFK as well as reasonably priced, but not very time efficient. Though since you're not really going to be there actively playing while doing this, is it really that much of a downside? Please like the video and support my content. Thank you, Noble Knight. Stage 1, for those opting to train the old-fashioned way, is the Lumbridge Cows. We'll be training here until we unlock Windbolt at level 17. I know this is a common one, but this slots in with Iron Men to give them enough cowhides to get the crafting levels for the leather Vam braces and Amulet of Magic that they're going to need. The same alternatives exist. As always, you can do chickens in Lumbridge or seagulls in Port Sarim. As we will be level 10 when we start this, I recommend you use Earth Strike, so you'll need an Earth Staff and approximately 64 Air Runes and 64 Mind Runes. Once we hit level 13, switch to a Fire Staff and cast Fire Strike all the way up to level 17, which will require approximately 168 Air Runes and 84 Mind Runes. All in all, from levels 10 to 17, you should only have to kill approximately 37 cows. Iron Men, if you haven't got your crafting level to 24, now is the time to do it. So keep killing cows and collecting the cowhides so you can craft your leather Vams at level 11 and your Amulet of Magic at level 24. The Barbarians are out, and Skeletons are in. Why? Because they have a 35% elemental weakness to air spells. There is a good safe spot I use in the Varrock sewers, though there are some level 14 Scorpions here, so you'll need to be level 28 combat, or wait for the aggro to drop. And thanks to their elemental weakness, we will be using Wind Bolt here all the way up from levels 17 to 35. At 17 magic, we get the following stats versus the level 21 skeletons. The rune breakdown should be appearing on the screen now, as well as the number of skeletons you'll need to kill. Okay, so now we've hit level 35, we're on to stage number 3. Here we're going to be training on Moss Giants. We'll be using Firebolt exclusively from levels 35 to 50 to take advantage of that juicy 50% elemental weakness. The rune breakdown should be appearing on the screen now, as well as the number of Moss Giants you will need to defeat. On top of the weakness, Moss Giants have 60 HP, making them a bit more AFK. They are easy to safe spot and have decent drops to boot. You can also get Mossy Keys, which allow you to fight Bryophyta for a shot at getting her essence. At level 50 we're on to stage 4. Technically this is the final stage for those seeking the most efficient path, as with a whopping 100% fire weakness, the Ice Warriors and Ice Giants are my new mob of choice for magic training. Initially we will be using Firebolt from levels 50 to 59, the combat data and rune breakdown for this should be appearing on the screen now, along with the number of Ice Warriors you will need to defeat. Once we hit 59 we can switch over to Fire Blast, and thanks to the bonus accuracy and damage, this is actually the best combat based XP rate for magic in free to play. The best that I've been able to find anyway. The combat data and rune breakdown for this should be appearing on the screen now, along with the number of Ice Warriors you will need to defeat. This method actually edges high level alchemy per cast based on average damage. That said, death runes are not cheap, and while this is a lot more AFK than high alching items, I think overall non-Ironmen can probably get a greater XP rate and make more money if you follow the high alchemy method in the next section. However, for me, this is still a very good option, particularly for Ironmen, or if you are looking for a more time efficient AFK training experience than splashing. The requirements for defeating Ice Warriors all the way from level 70 to 99 are on the screen now. Once you hit 55, you can use arguably the most useful spell in free to play, and I am of course talking about high level alchemy. High level alchemy is great as for certain items it gives a greater or equal coin value to the Grand Exchange. So it's a very easy and convenient way for Ironmen to get a good amount of money, it provides additional magic experience, and that base 65 XP per cast is hard to top. For non-Ironmen, high level alchemy also offers a reliable max XP per hour of 78k, and if you make sure to buy the correct items off the GE, can be used as a decent moneymaker. Better still, you can high alch noted items to max out your efficiency, as well as combine alching items with other training methods, say teleporting to boost the XP per hour. In all likelihood, for non-Ironmen, high alchemy represents the highest possible magic XP rate in free to play. It's cheaper than any of the blast spells, and at 65 XP per cast, you will get more XP per cast, except in the case of a blast spell cast on an enemy with a 100% weakness. The downside is that you will have to manually click all 197,967 clicks the old fashioned way. Just as a quick comparator, high alching, not including the time taken to buy items, will take you 164 hours and you should make money from this method. Unfortunately, this comes at the expense of manually clicking to cast, which will definitely impact how efficient your clicks are, increasing that completion time. The methods covered in section 4 are pretty much the best standalone options in free to play. However, I thought I would throw in a few alternatives to consider both for variety and for the quality of their drops. Ogresses are a great way to get some very profitable drops. They have a lot of health which makes them relatively AFK, and are easy to safe spot. However, their high defense stats make them quite costly to battle, as you will miss a lot of spells burning through your runes. That said, they do probably have the best drop rates of rune and other desirable items in free to play, so I would still consider them, especially if you're an Ironman in need of a rune full helm. Next up, Lesser Demons. At 70 magic, using Water Blast, we get some pretty good combat stats against these guys, as they have a 40% weakness to water spells. Not nearly as good as Ice Warriors, but they do have the added bonus of that 1 in 128 chance of a rune medium. So the choice here is, do you sacrifice some XP efficiency for the chance at some better drops? Last up we have Greater Demons. These are basically the same as the Lesser Demons and are just as susceptible to water based spells, but with even better drops as they offer the rune Full Helm and Addy Legs. The caveat is that they can only be found in the wilderness in free to play, and so you must weigh up if the potential reward is worth the PK risk. I like to try and bring a few bonuses at the end of my videos, and what I would say first is to try and complete the Dragon Slayer 1 quest, or at least start it. This will allow you to wield the best in slot shield, the anti-dragon shield, for free to play mages. It's also free as part of the quest. Definitely use your mossy keys to fight Bryophyta and possibly get Bryophyta's essence to unlock the best magic staff in free to play. If you're lucky enough to get Bryophyta's essence, you can go to Zaf's staffs with 50k coins, that's the staff guy in Varrock, and he will convert Bryophyta's essence into the staff for you. Though you may also want to consider selling this item to pay for a bond and get access to members for a while. Next up, for anyone who hasn't unlocked the Imbued Skull Scepter, this is probably something you want to do, especially as it unlocks the additional option to train at the Anku in the Stronghold of Security. See my 2.0 guide. As well as allowing you to cast Crumble Undead automatically, it also gives you a teleport to the Barbarian village. When you hit level 33, you can telekinetic grab gold, gold ore, and the gold necklaces underneath the Varrock West Bank. Not only is this a useful source of gold and an additional training method, but it can also be used to make money because the gold ore value on the Grand Exchange is generally higher than the cost of the runes to cast telekinetic grab. Therefore, you can use world hopping to telegrab gold ore before selling it on the Grand Exchange for a profit. And that brings us to the end of this video. I hope that this free to play magic guide was useful. Please leave a comment with any feedback or questions, as I'm keen to hear them, and all that's left for me to say is I've been the Lumberjay Knight, peace out, and thanks for watching.